How are you? How you doing? How you feeling?
Almost there. How are you, Tanach?
Baruch Hashem, a lot better. I'm gonna cut out that about.
Oh, I just missed you. Tanach, I completely missed you. I completely lost you for a second.
I'm cutting out at 8:40 to go on my phone because I have to go to PT in the car.
Well, the end is big. I got it. Try to make it up later. Okay.
I'll do it. Okay.
Yeah. And it's on YouTube, so you can watch it later.
Yeah, I know. Good morning, Zvika.
All right. Ajax. Please. Okay.
Did you start yet?
No, I didn't start yet.
Mom told me you're supposed to use a mask 2 or 3 times.
You want to say hello? You want to say hello to my friend son, who's learning Gemara with us? Come, don't be shy. Come, no, you don't take it off. Can you see him? That's Samach.
Good morning.
Doesn't matter. Smell bad, take another mask. Morning. All right.
Yeah.
Hi, Yax. Good morning. What happened? Kavan cannot make it in. All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Samach Beis. We're going to begin the new Mishnah that's going to speak about the items that women may not go out with B'Reshus Harabim Midoiraisa. Unlike the ones that we learned until now, that the Isur was only Midrabanan, as we have been learning. They might take it off, they might carry it, but then there are other articles that are not considered clothing, nor are they considered the ornaments tachshitin, and therefore Midoiraisa you may not go out with. We're going to learn here that Rashi, Shitas Rashi, is not like the Rabbeinu Tam, but Rashi holds that the tachshitin, that women may not go out with midrabanan because they might take it off and show it, is also a takana on men. The Rabbeinu Tam we spoke on in the beginning of the Perek holds, no, that men won't even take off the jewelry to show off. Rashi holds otherwise. We're going to learn a very interesting concept known as nashim am bifnei atzman hein, that women are considered their own nation. They're considered, the concept, lahavdil, that the Goyim say that men are from Mars, women are from Venus. The Chazal use these words by saying that they are a whole completely different nation as it applies to these dinim. We're going to be learning about an article called a koiveles, and ultimately we're going to have in the Gemara Ebraisa that gives more opinions than the Mishnah. There's going to be a 3-way machlokas tanoim whether a woman is allowed to go out with a koiveles, is a spice bundle that if a woman has bad body odor, she wanted to cover it, she would have a certain very strong spice that she would wear on her that would, so to say, cover over the bad odor. There's a Havamina to say, and indeed one Tana says she won't even take it off to show it off. She'll be ashamed by the fact that she needs to wear it. And we're going to go me'inyan le'inyan. The Gemara is going to tell us the three things, Gimel, Devarim, Meviim, Es, Ha'adam, L'dei, Anius, God forbid, including behaviors that are dirty. In other words, that cleanliness is a keli for bracha. And nivul, physical, and ruchnias, the dirt, attracts the malach of poverty. The malach of poverty is actually called nivul. And that's going to lead us in to various non-positive behaviors that women, the Jewish woman, engaged in before the Churban. We're going to speak about the non-positive behaviors that the men indulged in before the Churban. And obviously the lesson of all that, we're not going back to the negative history, but to learn from it, that when we reverse it, we will merit the imminent redemption. Amen. Let us start here on the Mishnah, Daf Samach Beis, Lo Yiseitze Isha. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shachol Nimidvar. Says the Mishnah, Lo Yiseitze Isha B'machat Hanakuva. A woman may not go out b'reshus harabim with a perforated needle. That means a needle with a hole, with a needle that has an eye in it. Such a needle is not a pin. It's not ornamental, but it's for sewing. It's functional. And if you're wearing something that's functional, if it's not ornamental, it's not your garment. It's not a tachshit. So you're carrying just because you stick it into your garment so that the garnish shelf. Next, nor may a woman not go out. That's the Mishnah with the ring that has a signet in it. Again, this ring is a functional ring. It's used to sign, it's used to seal. It's not ornamental. If it's not ornamental, then it's going to be considered a masui. Nor with the brooch. Now, as we'll learn in the Gemara, the brooch was something that some women used as an ornament. We'll explain what that is, but that's going to be the way we'll learn. Since the ruba of women don't wear this as an ornament, therefore it's considered a masui. The koiveles we just spoke out on the intro is some sort of spice bundle that a woman put in a pendant that she wore around her neck or in another part of her body. It gave off a very strong good odor. That was to camouflage a woman's bad odor if she had such a thing. Our Tana holds that there's an isun midoi raisa for her to go out with it. It's not ornamental. It's not a beged. Nor with a flask of balsam oil, similar. So it's not a pendant, it would be a flask. And she would put the most expensive oil. But again, this was done not for perfume. This was done to camouflage a bad odor. If she had such a bad odor, it's not considered a tachshit, nor is it a beged. However, on the last two, on this koivelos, on the spice bundle, and on this flask of balsam oil, the Chachamim hold poitrin b'koivelos u'b'tzleicha shel pal yotim. Pater means she's not violating an Isur Doiraisa, but Pater Lavarosa. That's the rule, not Mutter, Pater. She may not carry it out because she might take it off to show her chavertes, and then she might forget to put it back on and walk Daladamis B'Reshus Harabim. All right, Omar Ula. Going back to the beginning of the Mishnah. Says Ula v'chilufeyem b'ish. The opposite is by a man. Says the Rashi. Look inside the Rashi on top of Amar Ula v'chilufeyem b'ish. This is going specifically on the ring at Tabaskoi. So we spoke out on the first Mishnah, Tabas, that has no chaysim. Here we speak about a Tabas with a signet. So says Rashi, the Tabas yesh olav chaysim by a man. Im yatsa, if he goes out, look at the words in Rashi. Patur. You know what patur means? He's not chayiv by a woman, but he's not allowed to. It's asur midrabanan. What's pshat? That a man likes to feel like he's a big agresa macher. Like we mentioned, he goes with a big key ring. He's going around, a man that goes around with a ring with a signet. That's a right that he's a chashuv person. For him, it's ornamental. So an ornament a man can wear. A tachshit a man is allowed to wear, like we spoke out. The question is, did the Chachamim make a takana that a man shouldn't because he might show it off? Rashi holds yes. like the Baal HaMoed, not like the Rabbeinu Tam. The Rabbeinu Tam holds that a man not only is patur, that means he's not violating an Isur D'Oraisa, a man is mutter. Man is not going to show off his takshitin. But anyways, Rashi obviously says clearly here otherwise. And also, the ein olav chaisim, the opposite. If a man is wearing stam ring, the yatsa is chai of chatos because men don't wear rings. Oh, now how do you apply this halacha lemaisa for those men that today wear rings? That's a good question. Because today we're living at a time, at least that by the goyim, the men wear tachshitim. Whether a man is allowed to wear a ring or not, that's a big discussion in the Periscope. Because this might go into beged isha, cross-dressing. The bottom line is, men today, it's accepted, do wear rings. And if that's the case, it's not going to be considered asur midoraisa because it is a tachshit. However, we're speaking about with men's rings. I think we mentioned this here in Shabbos, that there's a tshuva of Rav Moshe that's very emphatically, this encourages for there to be, God forbid, a dual ring ceremony during a chuppah, keminek hagoyim, because that's mamash alav of leiseichel v'chukaiseim. And if you have a person that wants to have sometime during their wedding that the she gives the he a ring, that's something that may not be done under the chuppah, according to Rav Moshe, not even after you break the glass, once you leave the chuppah. Because this is the origin of she giving him a ring comes from non-Jewish sources. Okay, the kid said, Ula says, so you have to flip it. What is asur midoraisa by a woman is mutter midoraisa by a man. What is mutter midoraisa by a woman is asur midoraisa by a man. Alma kumtachai says the Gemara, because Ula holds, kol mida the chazila ish, if something is an accessory for a man, something is permitted for a man, that won't be allowed for a woman. This is not repetitive. There's a big chiddush to this. In other words, there's a havamina to say that since men and women are both human beings, if something is a tachshit for one group of human beings, it should be considered a tachshit for all human beings. But we don't say that. We remain in two different categories. And on that asks the Gemara, Masav Rabbi Yosef, we learned in Abraisa, Haroyim means shepherds. Yoitz in the first white line, Bisakin, a sack is a sackcloth. People normally don't wear as a garment a sackcloth. It's a very coarse, thick type of overcoat. People whose parnasa was to be outdoors like shepherds, and if it rains, they didn't want to get drenched, so they would wear sakin. So the din is that they are allowed to wear sakin because for them it's a garment. It means even if it's not raining, since when it rains they wear it, they can always wear it. And then the Baraisa continues, we don't say that only a shepherd who goes out on Shabbos with a sackcloth is not carrying, because for him it's a beged. Says the Baraisa, once this is considered a beged for one type of person, so then we expand it to all type of people. Ella, why do we speak about Torayim? Shedarkam shalarayim latzais bisakim. So the kasha that Rabbi Yosef is asking is that we see that since it's considered for shepherds a garment, everyone can wear it. So the kasha is, why don't we say the same thing? Okay, I get it, that women don't wear a signet ring as an ornament. So what? Since it's ornamental for a man, let it be considered ornamental for all. Since stama ring or jewelry is considered ornamental for women, why isn't it considered automatically an extension ornamental for men? The answer is the Gemara Elamar Rabbi Yosef, Kosavar Ula, unlike shepherds and non-shepherds. This one has this profession, that one has the other profession, but we're all in the same group of men. Nashim, men and women, we're so different. It's a separate group, it's a separate nation. So you can't apply what's considered something for women. It has nothing to do with men, and likewise, vice versa. It says in a Braisa, if a person finds tefillin in the marketplace in the Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, now you're not allowed to carry tefillin. You can't carry it. On the other hand, leaving it where you find it might lead to the tefillin's desecration. It might lead to the tefillin's destruction. Can't stop, leave it there. So what do? You can't carry it. Says the Braisa, machnisan zug zug. Like Rashi says, put on the tefillin the way we wear tefillin during a weekday. One on your hand, one on your head. Now you're wearing it. Walk into a private domain and take it off and leave it there. You didn't carry it, you wore it. Then go back. It means you can't put on more than one tefillin at a time. Clearly, Rashi didn't subscribe to those who put on more than one tefillin at a time. And by the way, that means that halacha l'maisa, if someone nowadays taka wears 2 pairs of tefillin, then he can put on 2 at a time. Oh, as long as you're putting it on in the way that you wear it during the weekday, it's not considered carrying. We're doing this, it's a heter. We're doing it to save the tefillin. And then the Braisa goes weiter. Echot ha'ish ve'echot ha'isha. Now, why would we say that? Women don't wear tefillin. L'chura, the answer is, you're right. But since it's considered a malbush for men, like by the shepherds, so now an extension, any human being. We don't separate men and women like 2 different nations. So says the Gemara, being predicated on Vaha mitzvah aseh shazman garamuhu, tefillin is in the category of time-bound mitzvahs, and the rule is, as we learn in Kedushin, L'chol mitzvah aseh shazman garama, nashim are preturais, women are exempt. And furthermore, just another nuance, since women are exempt, unlike other positive mitzvahs, Shazman Gerama, that taka, there's a machlokes tanoim, whether women are allowed to opt in to do it. Why would they not be allowed because of Baal Tosef? We paskin like the Tana that says they could do it. Not only may they fulfill time-bound positive commandments, but there's a machlokes, Rashi, Tosfos, and Rishonim, whether they can make a mitzvah, whether they can say the words Asher Kedishanu, b'mitzvahs of Vitzivanu, commanded, they're not commanded. We paskin, we Ashkenazim paskin, that they could make a bracha. Which is why they make a bracha if they take the lulav. They make the bracha if they sit in the sukkah. They make a bracha if they hear the shofar. Nevertheless, by the way, that we know that by tefillin, since they are exempt, they may not put on tefillin. And as the Ramah says, this, if they put on tefillin, we have to make a machoah, we have to protest. And the reason for that is because since tefillin demands a guf naki also includes for a woman during that time of the month, that's the opposite of a guf naki. During her period, and being that she has no control over it, whether dam will leave her uterus or not. And sometimes it happens even if she's regular, out of its regular time. So you're going to be machmer, you're going to do something. Well, it's nice to be machmer, it's nice to go beyond the letter of the law to get this mitzvah, but you might violate guf naki, which is why they're not allowed to put it on. So coming back over here, the only way to explain the Baraisa L'chura is by saying that again, men and women is like a shepherd and a non-shepherd. And that goes against Ula's explanation of the Mishnah. So says the Gemara, no, you can't compare one case. You know, it's nish temes. We who hold that tefillin is a mitzvah aseh shazman gerama. If a woman would find tefillin in the marketplace, she would not be allowed to wear it into a private domain. She can't. For her, it's carrying midai raisa because she never wears tefillin. That braisa, yeah, it's good to live and to learn. It's good. We live in order to learn. Holds like Rabbi Meir. I don't know if you ever heard this before. You know what Rav Meir holds? Rav Meir holds that tefillin is a mitzvah aseh that's not time-bound. Rav Meir holds that tefillin is day and night. Rav Meir holds that tefillin should be put on weekday and Shabbos. We already mentioned, I think, this yesterday or 2 days ago. That's a machlokes that we're going to have in Erev and Sadekeh regarding tefillin. Kosova Rav Meir that Lila is Zman tefillin. And Rav Meir also holds Shabbos is Zman tefillin. According to Rav Meir, means according to Rav Meir, women are mechuyev to put on tefillin. Listen to that. And therefore, what I mean, therefore the Braisa says that they have to do the same thing. For them, it's a malbush as well. Isn't that kind of awesome? According to Rav Meir, women are obligated to put on tefillin.
So, Rabbi, what happens if a woman finds a pair of tefillin on Shabbos in the street? A, and B, do we now say that it's less marasayin for a person to wear tefillin on Shabbos than to carry them?
Okay, so whoever didn't hear the question, there's 2 questions here. First of all, what happens if a woman finds tefillin on the street? If you are living in a place where there is a biblical Reshus Harabim, the woman cannot find a solution by wearing it. You have to be creative and find other solutions. I mean, the goal is it shouldn't get destroyed. I would say that today we're living in a world that there are plenty of non-Jewish people that are gavaldik. So ask them to help you to make sure it doesn't get desecrated or destroyed. Your other question is, what was the second question?
Marasayin and carrying versus wearing.
That what? According to Rav Meir, what's the marasayin?
If you talk about a man, you put it on Shabbos.
We're not worried about marasayin. We don't make up marasayins and taka. If not for tefillin, maybe we wouldn't have allowed it. So he's asking that since we don't put on tefillin on Shabbos, how will it look if you're walking in the street with tefillin? The importance of the tefillin not getting desecrated trumps that worry. Okay, let's go back. Now the Gemara is asking a question, taking a step back. Let's take a step back. You have a signet ring. Women don't show off that they're functional, and it's not an ornament. So you chayiv midoraisa. Hold on, asks the Gemara. There's another rule by all Hilchos Shabbos that if you violate any melacha shaloi kedarkoi, you're not violating an isur d'oraisa. You can't do it on a rabbinic level. Who carries something wearing it on the ring? You know what? You know when you chayiv chatos for carrying b'shoigig, if you carry something the way you normally carry it, put it in your hand. Wearing it is already should be considered unusual. You don't normally carry things wearing them. So even a woman by a signet ring should not be chayiv chatos. So Rav Yirmiyah the Gemara has to answer that it's sometimes women do wear it. Or they wear it to carry it. They carry it through wearing it. It's not called shaloi kedarkoi. Rav Yirmiyah, be'isha gizbares askinan. A gizbar, a woman who during the week when she works, her job is taka, amongst other things. She's an administrator, she's a secretary, she has to sign letters, she has to seal letters, she uses it. And since for her during the week she wears it, it's taka never called ornamental, but she walks around with it, she carries it through wearing it, therefore it's not considered unusual. Says the Gemara, Omar, either Rabba, noch into parentheses, Bar Baruchana Amar Rabbi Yechanan, or the Messiah Sashas amends that Amar Rava challenges Rabbi Yirmiyah, Teratzta Isha. Okay, but what about Ish? Let's go back to Ula. Ula made whatever is good by her is bad by him. Okay, in other words, we're saying that a man who wears Tama ring, he wears a wedding band in the times of Chazal, he's over a Isser Dainaisa because no one did that. And therefore, since he doesn't wear such a tachshit, it's not a man's tachshit, a ring, so he's violating Choitzah. But okay, I get it, that's not a tachshit, but what's Choitzah? Carrying, you don't carry things by wearing it. Again, it's Choitzah kila achayad. So Elo Amar Rava, I'm going to give you an answer that answers both questions. They're more similar, which is, let's go back to the first question about a woman with a signet ring. Even if she's not a gizbaris. Sometimes a man has a signet ring and he gives it to his wife, asking her, so please put it away in that chest, put it away in that drawer. You know, he asks his wife a favor to carry it from here to there. Being that it is a ring, sometimes any woman will wear it. She will wear it to carry it. Umanichasa biyada, not in her hand, on her finger. So it's not that unusual for her. Likewise, a woman will give her husband her ring that doesn't have a signet, her wedding band or any other ornamental ring. To ask the husband to bring it, let's say, to a jeweler if it needs fixing. And the husband also, instead of putting it in his hand or in his pocket with the fear he might lose it, he at that time puts it on his finger. So it's not that unusual. So indeed, if it's not a beged nor a tachshit, you can't say, you're not chayv chatos because it is shaloi kedarkoi. We don't say that. It is kedarkoi. Okay, two dots. A woman in the Mishnah cannot go out with a kuliyar, midoraisa, nor with a koivelas. So let's analyze what's a kuliyar. So you have Omar Rav, right? If someone sees, if it's Omar Rebbe, if someone sees over here, they're spelled out if you have a different Gemara, okay? He holds machbanta. Machbanta means a brooch. And like Rashi says, a brooch is used if a woman at the end of her blouse has an opening that she wants to close, so she would put the brooch on. So the chayra, what's wrong with that? Most women didn't do it. That's the word. It's not something that's used as a tachshit. It could be it's used as a function. But anything that's functional and it's unusual. Unusual makes it problematic, and therefore you chayv chatas. Interesting. Koiveles, I want to just go off me'inyan. We have on our garments sometimes buttons at the end of a shirt. They're not part of the beged because they're not functional, right? They're only there. So if you lose a button, you already have the button, right? You already have a button. I don't know if you have that on your shirt. Some people have that on their jackets and the insides. That might be a big problem. It might be a big problem because, again, even though It's not serving anything right now. It's only sewed on over there for something that's not needed now for the beged. Certainly not ornamental. People don't even see it. Okay, and taka many from people take it off. Now, what's a koivelas? Here we go. Amar Rav, Amar Aleph Reish was Amar Rav. Nachmal Amar Rav, Humarta the piloin. Again, you had a pendant, and in the pendant you put a packet of piloin. Zakt Rashi Vassus das piloin. 4 lines under the Gemara. Kesher shekosher by sam. A kesher literally means a knot. It means a pendant. It means something that's tied up. And the name of this fragrance is piloin. Vereichi arav shmekt zeir gut. Ubelaz, Balashanam Zora, look at this, balsamu, certain type of balsam, which is expensive. And here's the key part of Rashi. And the Isha Sherechara, only a woman. A few people have pushed a very bad body odor. And they want to hide it, so they would wear this koivelas. Back inside the Gemara of Omar of Asi, Choymar to the pilon. This is very insightful. In other words, hold on, she's Chayiv Chatos. Why is she Chayiv Chatos? She always wears it. So we're going to analyze this taka, why she Chayiv Chatos. Why isn't it for her like an ornament? So we'll see in a moment. Indeed, by your kavelas, there's a 3-way machlekes. Let's say the kavelas, the Imi Yatzisa says the first time on the Braisa, which aligns with what our Mishnah says, Chayevas Chatos divided of Meir. However, the Chachamim hold, and by the way, the halach is like the Chachamim, she's not Chayiv Chatos. Let's say Midrabanan. However, it's not called carrying. It's Isur Darabanan, as we'll see in the Gemara, we'll explain. The same concept, she might take it off to show it off, and then she might end up carrying it. And Rabbi Eliezer is even more lenient. He says she's allowed to go with the lechatchila, it's mutter. And now the Gemara analyzes what Michael Miflagi. That may it holds, it's a bona fide masoi. It's a bona fide masoi since most women do not wear it. Just like we spoke out with that brooch. Most women don't use it. She can't say, but I use it. No. If everyone would use it, it becomes part of the beged. If not everyone uses it, it's not part of the beged. The Rabbanan hold it's a tachshit. For whom? For those women. For those women, it's a tachshit. Just like and like we said by the shepherds. And we definitely, all the women are in the same group. Since some women wear it, it's considered a tachshit. Eloma, why do they say that midrabanan she shouldn't go out? Oh, the dilma shalfa, she might remove it. Umachva, to show it off, and then instead of putting it back on, she'll come and carry it on. Then she'll be given an isur dairaisa. So it's a takana to prevent that prohibition of taking place. And Rabbi Eliezer holds gavaldik. Man darka lemirme. Who wears it on them? Only, like we read in the Rashi, a woman sherechara. So what do you think she's going to take it off to show it off? She'll never do that. Isha sherechara loy shalfa umachia. She won't show it off and then end up carrying it. It's embarrassing for her. She doesn't want to show people that she has that because that's something that's worn by a woman who has something unpleasant about her. And therefore, it's not going to come about. Oh, so we quoted Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is very lenient. The hot Tanya, but we learned another Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says the words poited, pater, avalasar. Pater bekovelas, ubetzolecha shel palyotin. Is it pater or is it mutar lechatchila? So they went like Hashem. Ki koya de Rabbi Meir. When Rabbi Eliezer says the words pater, he heard Rabbi Meir, and he disagrees with Rabbi Meir. Says chayiv. He says no, it's not chayiv. But he didn't mean pater, but it's asur. He just wanted to challenge Rabbi Meir. When he heard the Rabbanan that said pater, he also challenged. He said no, it's not pater, it's mutar. Okay, now. Said key, in other words, the Gemara is explaining. Ki koya de Rav Meir that he heard that Rav Meir says chayiv chatos. He says no, pater. Pater means there's no chatos, and it's emes. Rabbi Eliezer holds it's no chatos. The emes, it's even better than that. But he didn't hear better than that at that point. He heard Rav Meir, and ki koya de Rabbanan when he heard the Rabbanan that said pater, but it's asur. So Rabbi says no, that also not. Muter lachatchila daf samach beis amid beis umay Rabbi Meir, as Rashi says on top of the Amid. Where do we find a brayso where we only quote Rabbi Meir and not also the Rabbanan? Because if Rabbi Eliezer would have heard both, then the emesis he would have said muter. So they come back inside the Gemara, the Tanya. There is a brayso that only speaks about shitas Rav Meir. The brayso says lo say isha b'mafteach shebiyada. A woman may not go out with the reshus harabah with a key in her hand, and if she went out, she's chayeves chatos. You're going to ask Pshita, And by the way, you have another girsa of this shita of Rav Meir. And the Tosefta, there the version is not that she may not go out with a key in her hand, but it means she may not wear the key as a ring. That's like a chiddush. And that's a whole thing that, by the way, many people do that. They have these tie clips with the key. But the point of the Tosefta b'shitas Rav Meir is that no woman go around with a ornament of a key, with a ornamental key. You can do something so unusual and say it's an ornament. That will be the shita of Rav Meir, and therefore you chayv chatos. Rabbi Eliezer poiter b'koivelos u'b'tzloiches shel palyotin. End of quote. And right away you see something is missing here. Frek the Gemara koivelos. Rav Meir is speaking about a key. You're challenging Rav Meir regarding koivelos. Rav Meir never opined by your koivelos. Koivelos manachar shuma. Whoever mentioned it? Muslim zogin chasuri mechzera b'hachiktani. No. Rav Meir spoke about she can't go with a key in her hand or wearing it as a ring, a key. And then Rav Meir added that she may not go out with a koivelos, nor with a tzoloich yeshal palyatin. And if she goes out, chayavas chatos. Did it Rav Meir? In this statement, there's no chachamim. And on that says Rabbi Eliezer pointed not by the ring, he's moide by the ring, but he's pointed b'kaveles u'b'tzoloich shel palyotin. And again, he meant you're wrong. Chatos, there's no chatos. The emes is she's not even violating the rabbanon. Now let's go weiter. Says the Braisa, this Braisa. When do we say the above kishiyesh bahem boisam? Oh. So she's carrying, let's say, this pendant that has the mamushes of the balsamu, or there's some balsam in the flask. But if there's nothing substantial in these kalim, then you're chayiv for carrying an empty pendant. And it's not a pendant that's ornamental. It's only made to help you carry the perfume. If there's nothing in there, then you're chayiv. Now, by the way, this is a tremendous chiddush, as the Gemara points out. Omar Rav Ada bar Ahava. Zoisei meres. Hamoitzi oicholin potem mikashir bekeli chayev. Wow. Aleph Beis. Aleph. When it comes to the violations of Shabbos midoiraisa, biblical malachis, as a rule, we have shiurim, which means that if a person violates what theoretically is an Isser D'Oraisa, but less than the shiur, then they're not violating it on a D'Oraisa level. Let's speak about carrying, L'mashal. The rule is, we'll learn this a little bit later, that if a person carries less, if it's food item, less than the size of a dried out fig, they're not violating a Din D'Oraisa. Now, what happens if I have a receptacle whose purpose is to carry food? And if that would be empty and I would carry that receptacle, I'm violating Yisur D'Oraisa. I'm carrying out something that I'm not allowed to carry it. Excuse me. What happens if that receptacle has food in it, but the amount of food is less than the shiur? We'll learn later that there are tanoim that hold that you're potter. You're carrying a keli. No. If the keli would have been empty, then you're chai for carrying a keli. If you're carrying a keli that has in it food, and the keli was made to carry food, which means the keli halachically is bottled to the food, if the share of the food is less than the violated amount, less than the dried out fig, then you're going to be potter, not you're carrying the share of the food. You're carrying a keli, not the keli you don't even look at. Says Rav Ada bar Ahava, Rabbi Eliezer does not subscribe to that, based on the premise that will challenge that even if there is no perfume inside the pendant or inside the flask, the fragrance is still there. And if the fragrance is still there, right, what did he just say? That if it's empty, you're chayiv. Why are you chayiv? The content, we're going to go on the premise, is there less than the shiur, because the fragrance is there without the mamashes. If the pendant is bottled to that which is in it, then you should be you should not be chayiv. He as the charay that is, you are chayiv. Okay, because the aim dummy, it should be like the case where there's less than the shiur. And nevertheless, Rabbi Eliezer says that you're chayiv. Gavaldik. So says Ravashi, no, lav dafka. Rabbi Eliezer can hold, like we'll learn later, the Tanach and the Mishnah, that if you have less than the shiur in a holder, you're potter. Food, less than the shiur. carrying a keli, the keli doesn't count because the keli is bottled to the food. Here, Rabbi Eliezer spoke about a case where there is zero fragrance. There is zero mamashes. In other words, you don't have the balsamu. You don't have the soloichia shell, whatever you put in there. You don't have the mamashes. There's only the shmek. That's already not considered something substantial, and that's why the keli is not bottled to it. If there is something with mamashes, but less than the shiur, you put it. The Shana Hachir, Rabbi Eliezer said, the leisei l'mamasher klal. A woman wants to wear it because, true, the residual fragrance is still there. But if there's nothing mamashizdik in it, then we can no longer say that the keli is bottled to something that's not substantial. Gewalt. Now that we spoke about women wearing these fancy fragrances, now the context of our dinim was about a woman who has a reichara, and for her it's not that beyond the norm. She's not indulging in luxuries. This was almost a necessity to camouflage her bad smell. But now we're going to have a whole Amid speaking about people who overly indulge in Gashmiistic indulgences. And as we have in Azino, that Vayishman, Yeshurin, Vayivat, right? Shamanto, Kosisa, Avisa, that's the human nature in Galus. And we're going to speak about Psukim. We're going to begin with the Pasuk in Amos. That was the Navi speaking about that even though the Yidden heard that there's going to be a Churban, this is Churban Bayis Rishon, instead of them taking to heart and doing tshuva, they still continue to engage in certain indulgences, including the Reisha Shemanim Yivshachu. They still anoint themselves with the finest of oils. What is considered the finest oil? That is Paliotoin. Right, as we learned inside the Rashi, Balaz, Balsamun. Masav Rabbi Yosef, you're telling me that all of the behaviors that are quoted in this pasuk in Amos is considered specifically chashuv indulgences beyond the needed. Says in a brayso, steht in a brayso, af al paliotain gosar Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava v'loy hoydoloi. Right after the Churban, as we have at the end of Soit Chazal, who did not want for us to be overly indulgent until the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built. They outlawed certain behaviors. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says that they made a dakana that no one can anoint themselves with this paliotin oil. However, but the Chachamim did not accept it. The question is, why not? And if you're telling me that the Reishish Shemanim Yimsheichu, that what's considered the finest of oils, okay, you can have oil, but the finest, from Tainug, the reason why they outlawed behaviors after the Churban is because something that's not a necessity, something that's already in the category of Tainug, don't indulge in the greatest of Ta'anugim before the temple is built, then why Amai Loi Hoidoloi? Amaralei Abaya Ulatameich, if your rationale, if your way of thinking is correct, that everything mentioned in this Musar Dika Pasuk of Amos, in Amos, about what we were doing, even though we should have a little bit become Hiskafia Bissel and do tshuva, but we know we kept on indulging ourselves. If everything mentioned in this Pasuk is something that is banned after the Churban, it says weiter that Hashoisim, that we still drank, b'mizrikei yayin. The mizrikei yayin. Now, the pshat of a mizrak, we had this in Kachim, right? You're makabel the dam by karbonis. A mizrak means a bowl, but we're going to learn a drush. Mizrikei yayin, from the word zoyrek, throwing wine. There were certain behaviors that people indulged in while they were drinking that was not needed, but it was beyond the norm. Ravasi. One of them says that mizrikei means kinishkanin. Kinishkanim, explains Rashi, that they used to have very tall glasses of wine that had two spouts, allowing two people to drink out of the same glass at the same time. And when that happened, you know, when you have a straw with our kids, so one person drinks in, one person pushes out, it throws the wine around in the cup. That we would drink wine in Azah unneeded, but beyond the norm, because we were very indulgent way. The Chad Amar, that the word, again, mizrike, doesn't mean only bowls, it also alludes to throwing of wine, that there was a certain technique that people would fill up a cup of wine and they would throw it to their fellow, and the fellow would catch it and nothing would spill out. And that was something that the people, that again, the indulgent people would engage in. They wouldn't just drink the wine, they would make a ganze performance with it. If Chadamar, that Shem is rocking, And all of that is spoken to in Amos that I told you the Churban is happening and you're still doing it. Now, if everything mentioned, not only the anointing ourselves with the best fragrances, should have been outlawed, Hachinam the Aser, is it Aser after the Churban to use these cups or to throw these wines? It's not true. It's not. Rabba Barafuna went to the house of or to the household of the Reish Galusa, and he noticed there that V'shasa bekin nishkanin, and just because the Reish Galusa did something, it doesn't mean it was okay. But we had a whole sugya a few daf ago that if you see something that's not okay, you have to speak up. You have to reprimand. And is the charai that not everything mentioned in the pasuk is outlawed, and therefore the reason taka pal yotlein is the reis hashmanim. It's not outlawed because here the Gemara will explain that which became outlawed and that which is not outlawed. Ella kol midei the islay both tainog. If there is a behavior that is not to address a necessity, it's beyond. You're going beyond what's needed. You're getting into the world of pleasure, and it also at Simcha. That is where Gazru Rabbanon, that until the Beis Hamikdash will be built, you may not indulge in. Abel Mila the Is Beit Tainug, something that adds Tainug, but the Leis Bas Simcha doesn't add joy, like Gazru Rabbanon, which is why fine oils is Taka Tainug, but it doesn't give you Simcha. Now, guys, wine per se does give simcha, but that's not the issue. We were not speaking about outlawing wine. We were speaking about outlawing doing certain behaviors that enhances the pleasure of wine drinking. Having these two spouted cups, throwing the wine, it adds in the tainug. It doesn't add in the simcha. The behavior, the wine does, but we're not speaking about wine. And therefore, since it's only tainug, but there isn't an addition of simcha, neither of them became outlawed. Now let's continue reading what it says in that pasuk in Amos. What were we still doing? That we still continue to lay on beds made out of ivory. You need an ivory bed. And and we were stretched out on our couches. That's the pshat. In other words, good geschlafen, good gepuffen. So Amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, no. That v'sruchem al arsoisem is something much worse. Melamed, it means shahoyu mashtina mayim b'fnei mitoseim arumim. That when we would get up, this is before the Churban, we would get up in the middle of the night and a person has to urinate, and people b'chal slept on garb, right? They were covered, but they had no garments on at all. They would stand up, and as we'll see the details, and they would get out of their bed, and while they're facing their beds, they would urinate on the floor. That's mamish. It's not clean. It's a very unclean practice, and we're being criticized for that. That almost is criticizing us. So the Gemara says, hold on. Okay, I get it. It's not good to have unhygienic practices, taka. But this pasuk is linking these behaviors into the galus. That's a reason to go into galus. He was upset at this taich. That's the pshat. How do you explain that after Amos reprimanded us for our overindulgence, he says, why we're going to go out, we're going to be the first ones, the people who did this were the first ones to go into exile. Why? It's not nice, it's not modest, it's dirty, it's not hygienic. No, before everyone else, no, it's much worse than what it sounds like. Elu, this refers, this suruchim al arsoisam is worse. That people that didn't have the right boundaries in the world of arroyas in a horrible way, that they ate and drank together. And they would attach their beds one with the other. And they would exchange the wives ones with the other. And they would defile from sharuach, they would defile their couches. For that, okay, so that's why we went. That's people who did that. Or Barosh Goylam and Taka the Bais Rishon was destroyed amongst other things for Gil Arayas. Now that we did mention the pshat of urinating in front of one's bed, not the reason to go Barosh Goylam, but it's definitely not a good behavior. Now we're going to go Me'inyan Le'inyan, that Amar Ababo or Amri Love and Masni Satana. Others say that the following is not from an Amayra, but it was taught by a Tana. Gimel, the bottom of Yemas Adam Le'anios. There are three behaviors that bring about poverty. The Ewan, and these are the three. It's good to know this, the opposite, to do the opposite. If a person urinates in front of their beds, naked, and with the details that we'll learn, and like Rashi here brings, as we'll learn in Arvei Psachim Daf Kufiyad Aleph Amid Beis, Rashi, that Sarah, the Anayusa, that the Malach appointed over poverty, the name of the Malach is Navil, from Nibul, from disgusting. The Navil Karile, his name is Navil, he's called Navil, and V'oyev Makim Mius, he is attracted to dirty places, Begashmias. He is disgusting. So once the Malach likes living, the Malach of Anios comes to the neighborhood, he brings about Anios with him. So that's number one. Back in the Gemara, or back in this quote of the Braisa, Umizalzel benatilas yadayim. We're speaking here, my friends, about natilas yadayim before a su'udah. And listen to the third one, and someone who's being cursed by his wife in his own presence. No, his wife was so angry at him, she doesn't speak bad about him, not in front of him, bifanav. And we'll see why she does that, and that taka brings about to Anius, and the Gemara now will explain all of these three. Says Rava, let's limit this. Don't forget, in those days they had no running water. People had a avit shalmei raglayim b'lashon hakodesh. I don't know the exact word in English, but it was a certain keli that people had near their beds when they woke up. What should they do? That's okay.
Chamber pot.
Huh?
Chamber pot.
A chamber pot, thank you. So no, a chamber pot was 100% fine. Before the chamber pot, other details. When is it considered disgusting if you're urinating on the ground, at least face away from your bed? We're speaking about people that face their beds. But if their back is towards the beds, then leis lamba and fight it. Even if you're facing your beds, only if you are urinating on the ground. But if in the chamber pot, thank you, then leis lamba. Okay, next case. A person does away with natilas yadayim before eating. That brings poverty. That's only for someone who doesn't wash his or her hands. But if you're not medagdek natilas yadayim, you're washing. You're not washing properly. By Hashgacha Pratas, we're learning now Hilchas Natilas Yadayim, which is really fascinating. You're not medagdek. You're washing, but you're not washing. Then not a problem for Anius. The Gemara says, no. The law of Milsi, it's not correct. Because Rab Chizda says Rab Chizda was very wealthy. And he attributed his wealth, listen, to the fact that he was very meticulous and he used a lot of water for Natilas Yadayim. He says, Ano mashoy meloi chafni. I make sure that all of my hand is filled with water from the Natilas Yadayim, and therefore, so that God gives me God's hand filled of goodness. In andere Werte, it's commensurate. If a person, Rab Chizda is implying, if a person washes, not that he doesn't wash at all, but he's stringy the way he washes, then his parnasa will be also limited. So don't say that as long as you're washing, you're good. No. Of course, if a person doesn't wash at all, God forbid, they can become poor. If a person is washing not as good, you won't become poor. But no, the better you wash, the more parnasa you will have. By the way, many people include in this, there are other sources in Chazal, benching articulately, also connected to Ashirus. And the third, the negative, that the she'ishta mekalatul, the fun of someone whose wife curses him in front of him. So Amar Rava, hold on. If sometimes people nebuch, they're not well, they curse their husbands for no reason, that's not going to bring him poverty. But nebuch, he's being cursed and he's becoming poor. He's the cause of it. Amar Rava, al iskei tachshiteha. If she's cursing him because he's not buying her jewelry, that's when he'll become poor. And another detail, the Hanamili, who the Islay, that he was able to, and he didn't. And the wife schmecks that. She feels that. She's not appreciated. She's upset. She curses him before he will become poor. But if a person is unable, then he's not going to get punished. And under that, in the positive, that if a person is hygienic and also modest, comes together over here. And the person is very plentiful with the amount of water that he uses and other dinim of natilas yadayim. And if a person honors his wife by buying her jewelry, this mamash brings about wealth. Okay. Going back to certain negative behaviors, beginning with women, moving on to men. that what happened before the Churban. That before we spoke about a pasuk in Amos, now we're speaking about a pasuk in Yeshaya, but it's about the same era, right? This is Bayis Rishon. What's the meaning of the pasuk? And Hashem, God says, Yan, because ki gavu b'nai Sion, gavu means because of the haughtiness, the gaiva of the daughters of Zion. What was their haughtiness? Taiches, the Gemara, Shlomo Halchas, became his kufa. They would walk with an erect posture. We learned this in Brachas. We're not allowed to walk overly humbled. It's almost gaiva shol sheket. But to be careful not to walk, with your nose in the ear. Right? We learned about that with the rams, with the wolves. Not a good thing. We're quoting part of the pasuk, and the Gemara is attaching it. And it says, that they walked with an outstretched neck. What is that beyond the Kaimas Kufa? He says, they would take very small steps. Akav means a heel, Gudel means a big toe. They would put one foot right, they would walk very slowly in order for men to have time to gaze at them. That's also a problem. The next is they would be gazing with their eyes, end of quote, Taiches the Gemara, to have a mullen kuchla. They would put a lot of kuchal. Kuchla was a certain blue makeup medicine that men and women would put on, but they would put a lot of eye makeup, and they would look at men and they would wink at them. They would try to get their attention. Next quote, Haloich the Takuf, they floated when they walk. What's that? They floated when they walk. So a tall woman wanted to make sure that everyone notices her. She would stand dafka near a short woman for her to look a lot taller than everyone else. To attract people's attention beyond the norm. Then it says, that they would spew venom with their feet. They spewed venom with their feet. That in the way, he heard in the shiur of Rav Ami that these were women, they would put very good perfumes in their shoes, and they would walk around in the shukais of in the shukay Yerushalayim, and when there were a bunch of bachrim walking by, they would stamp on the ground. That would, so to say, break open the vial of perfume, and this perfume would spray on the bachrim. And that would bring an additional yetzer hara in the men, ke'eres bechos mamish, like the venom of an angry snake. And my Puruna saying what happened to these women, and this is a very sad pasuk there in Yeshaya. It says that instead of the fragrance, God brought about makia. It became decayed. Taiches the Gemara, Makim Shoyim is basmois boy, put on their bodies in the places where they put their perfume. Nas in the Makim, it became physically full of decay. Fighting in the pasuk, the Tachas Chagura, instead of the belt, there was nikpa, means there was bruising. Taiches the Gemara, the Makim Shoyim was betziltzol, the places where they would put a belt, part of their adornment. Nas in the kafim, God pushed their bodies became bruised up. Fighting in the pasuk, the Sachas Maisei Miksha, instead of their carved out jewelry. What does that refer to? It makes karcha that became bald. It refers to the way you make up your hair. In the place dafka where they are during the years that the Nebuch they lost their hair. And instead of sash machgoy they were wearing a belt of sackcloth, meaning psachim that openings that brought about to rejoicement. Became a place where you adorn a sackcloth. This refers to the private parts. All these things befell these women in place of their beauty. This is the statement that that instead of beauty source, sadly they went menakotza elakotza. Weiter in the pasuk, v'sipach, either with the samach or with the sin, v'sipach Hashem kot koid b'nai, that Hashem afflicted. The kotkad means the heads of the daughters of Zion. That means that God, some of them never broke out with leprosy. How do we know that the sipach means soras? Based on the pasuk in Tazria. It says over here sipach. It says in Tazria in the beginning, l'se'es v'lasapachas, here sapachas. And that was the punishment. And finally, the end of the pasuk was that Hashem poshein ya'adam, that their openings began to pour. What does that mean? Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. One of them says that they had very heavy periods that they poured out like a jug, like a pitcher. And the Chad Amar, no, ya'adam is from the word of a forest, and that means shenasu pischeim kiyad, that their openings, their private parts, became filled with hair. like a forest. We have this in another Gemara that we'll get to soon, that part of beauty is not to have hair over there. And the opposite happened to them. Hashem made them unattractive. And now we're going to go from the women's misbehavior to the men's misbehavior. That the men that lived in Yerushalayim, this is all again before the Churban, Anshe Shachatz Hoyun. Anshe Shachatz means, in Yiddish, there's a word, someone who's coarse. Someone who's coarse and at least owns up that he's coarse. He shouldn't be grub, but he doesn't try to hide it. But then there are certain people that become so arrogant that even in their coarseness, they try to speak refined. Ki'ilu thinking that they're speaking about very coarse behavior, but because they speak about it in a shena way, it minimizes the grubkeit. It's even worse. That's called shachatz. Look inside the last Rashi in the Amid. That medaberim beloshen gaiva v'lage safa. They're hiding what they really mean. They're refined in a very wrong way. Says the Gemara. This was their conversation, a very grubber conversation. And they were trying to hide it. They thought it's not refined. One asked the other, what did you dine on today? What did you eat today? Did you eat the pasamela? Did you eat kneaded bread? Or did you eat unkneaded bread? They were talking about zanus. Did you have a relation with a psula? Did you have a relation with a ba'ula? Which is a terrible conversation. But if you haven't yet, at least expose the grubkeit. Just because you speak b'lashon nekiah about the most not kosher behavior, even worse. Or they one asked the other, did you drink beyain gurdeli? Gurdeli wine was white wine. Daf samach gimel. Or did you have beyain chadeli? Did you have chadeli wine? Rashi says it was dark wine, which means they meant to ask, well, was she white? Was she dark? B'meisav rachav, did you recline on a white couch, or b'meisav katzan on a narrow couch? B'chaver toiv, with a good companion, or b'chavara with a bad companion, attractive, not attractive. And Omer Rav Chizda, they were all referring to zanus. And all of that brought about a terrible churban. And amongst the other things, says the Gemara, Amar Achava, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Atse Yerushalayim shall kinamayin hayu. Can you imagine that in those days, the logs that people would use for fuel, people used the most inexpensive wood for fuel because you just burning it up. That was out of cinnamon. Even those logs in Yerushalayim, they were so blessed by Hashem, the Gashmis was so abundant that it was the most good smelling logs. And when a Yid would make supper or make breakfast, if he would use these logs, it was so powerful in a good way that their good smell of these logs would give a good scent in the whole Holy Land. And when Yerushalayim was destroyed, Nignazu, they were hidden. They're here, but we don't have access to them. And only one shtickle the size of a barley bean remained. And who has it? It can be found in the storehouse. Listen to this word of Tzimtzoi Malchus, of Queen Tzimtzoi. L'chur al pi Chasidus, mamish Tzimtzoi mean Tzimtzum. And that's where in every oilam, where does the tzimtzum happen? It happens in the Malchus. Zah Malchus. Zah is the male, Malchus. Malchus is the female. She's the queen. In other words, what's the reason why there's a lack of abundance? Because God wants to give us abundance. But if we take all of that and we allow for there to be what we call yinikas hachitzainim, if all of that goes into the wrong direction, it feeds the chitzainim, then there's no other option. Then there has to be a tzimtzum. Then that abundance has to be withheld in order for us to make sure that there isn't any more yinikas hachitzainim. But all that is temporary, because everything that comes from the Oivishter comes abundantly. And now we are about to experience the Geula, and Yerushalayim is going to be rebuilt. And we're going to see that Begashmias, there's going to be azah abundance and azah bracha, mamish from everything. And we by now have the maturity to make sure that we don't allow it to go in places, or it should not lead us to behaviors that are not to be had. God willing, to be continued.
Yeah. Rabbi, question for you.
Yes.
Before you mentioned, the Gemara mentions the Isser of not juggling goblets of wine. But I think we learned
there is no Isser. That there is no Isser.
Oh, that there's no Isser in juggling them.
They never outlawed it, yeah. Yeah, they never outlawed it.
Oh, they did not outlaw it.
It was not everything mentioned in that pasuk in Amos became outlawed.
I see. Got it. Okay. But even though it says Gozra Abanon, that was
And other things. They ask, yes, if why weren't those oils outlawed? So he says that everything in the pasuk should be outlawed. You see that this juggling of wine was also not outlawed. And the answer is because they only outlawed something that brings both tainug and simcha. The juggling of the wine doesn't bring simcha. It brings tainug. Listen, I'm just repeating the words. That now we have to align our minds with that. Brings pleasure. When you're drinking wine, if you're doing shtick with the wine, you have more tainug. It doesn't make the wine inebriate you more. It doesn't give the wine more intoxicating power. It doesn't. It gives more tainug when they drink it.
But the juggling is giving you simcha.
No, that's what I'm saying. The juggling is giving you tainug. Okay, let me go different, Yaakov. You can argue any tainug gives you simcha. Right? You can argue that.
Because in Sukkah we learned that was it Shmuel juggled goblets of wine on Simchas Beis HaShoeva. That was to be the kind of mitzvah of Simchas Beis HaShoeva, no?
And we find this by weddings, but that's not the type of simcha that we're talking about. Muzmazagan.
Okay.
Listen, what did they? I give you an example. What did they outlaw? They outlawed for a woman to go with a crown when she goes to her kala with a golden crown. That's called simcha. That's called simcha.
Mm-hmm.
That fills the woman with joy.
Interesting. Okay. Different levels.
Yeah.
Shkoyach.
All right, Chavre, have a gewaldige day. Yirat Hashem tomorrow morning at 7.
Okay. Bye-bye.